Okay, on to another example. This will be slightly more complicated again. Okay, so step one, look at the coefficient of x squared. It's just 1, so we don't need to divide anything. Remember, if this weren't 1, for example, if it were 2, you would divide every single term by 2. Step 2, I'm going to move this constant term, the thing without any x or x squared, to the other side. And of course, we flip the sign. We x squared plus 8x equals negative 20. And as always, I leave a little room for a plus blank on both sides. And what do we put in the blank? Well, we look at this guy, the coefficient of x, and in a little thought bubble off to the side, we divide that by 2. So 8 over 2 is 4. And then we take that and we square it. 4 squared is 16. We put a plus 16 in both the blanks. And what's the purpose of doing that? Well, I claim the thing on the left is a perfect square. To see what it's the perfect square of, remember this step. After we divided by 2, we got 4. I claim the thing on the left is x plus 4 squared. Why is that? Well, just to check, I'm going to FOIL x plus 4 times x plus 4. And I do indeed get x squared plus 4x plus 4x plus 16, which is x squared plus 8x plus 16. So this should always happen if you did it correctly. Anyway, that's the left side. On the right side, negative 20 plus 16 is negative 4. Next step, square root both sides. Don't forget to put a plus or minus on the right. So on the left, the square root and the square, they just cancel each other out. X plus 4 is plus or minus square root of negative 4. Uh-oh. What's the square root of negative 4? It's a square root of a negative number. That's imaginary. So, negative 4 is negative 1 times positive 4. So the square root is the same as the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 4. So the square root of 4 is 2. Square root of negative 1 is I. That's our imaginary root. So the right side is plus or minus 2i. Another way to think about it is anytime you have the square root of a negative number, just take the square root of the positive number, square root of 4 is 2, and just stick an I at the end. Okay. So we have x plus 4 is plus or minus 2i. You just move that plus 4 to the other side, flip the sign. X is negative 4 plus or minus 2i. So these are the two solutions to the original equation, namely negative 4 plus 2i and negative 4 minus 2i. It would be a very tedious exercise, but as always, you could plug those in and they would satisfy it. All right, folks, on to our final completing the square problem. Watch out, this one's going to be even harder than before. So if you have any brains and or any intelligence, now is the time to use them. I always say, if you can't complete the square, that means you are a square. So you better pay attention. First thing to observe, we have a coefficient of x squared here. We have a 3. That's an uh-oh alert. Whenever that happens, we have to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. Equivalently here, that would be dividing every single term by 3. Right, so we're multiplying everything by 1/3 or dividing everything by 3. So 3 over 3 is just 1, so this is x squared. 2 over 3 is 2/3. Not 2/3, 2/3. 5 over 3 is 5/3. Not 5/3, 5/3. And 0 over 3 is just 0. Next up, we take this constant term, we move it to the right-hand side and flip the sign. So x squared plus 2/3 x is negative 5/3. Don't forget to add a plus blank. So what do we put in this blank? Let's go to our little thought bubble. Use our brains. So what we put is 1/2 of this guy. So 2/3 divided by 2 is the same as 2/3 times 1/2. 2/3 times 1/2, well, 2's cancel, that's 1/3. Now we don't put that there. We take this 1/3 and we square it. So 1/3 squared is just 1/3 times 1/3. And you can multiply across. 1 times 1 is 1, 3 times 3 is 9. So that's 1/9. And that's what we put in these blanks. Okay, so at this point we've completed the square. The thing on the left will be the square of a binomial. Which binomial? Well, you go back here, it'll be x plus that. So x plus 1/3 squared, if we FOILed it, would be the same as the left side. I'm not going to check that this time. On the right-hand side, you have negative 5/3 plus 1/9. How can we add those? You need to get a comma denominator. So we need to multiply by 3 over 3. If we do that, multiply across, negative 5 times 3 is negative 15, and 3 times 3 is 9. So we have negative 15/9 plus 1/9, which is negative 14/9. Now we can square root both sides. On the left, the square and the square root just cancel, so you have x plus 1/3. On the right, it gets complicated. So we have a negative 1. That means, well, we have a negative 14 over 9, but that factors as negative 1 times 14 over 9. So when we have the square root of this whole thing, this is just square root of negative 1 times square root of 14 over square root of 9. We can distribute the square root over multiplication and division. So square root of negative 1 is just I. Root 14, well, there's no perfect squares that go into 14, so it's just root 14. But root 9, that is a perfect square. So square root of 9 is 3. I almost forgot the plus or minus. You got to put a plus or minus in front of all this too. So we get x plus 1/3 is plus or minus I root 14 over 3. And then we just move the 1/3 to the other side and make it negative. So x is negative 1/3 plus or minus I root 14 over 3. That's it, folks. Remember, this is shorthand for two different roots. Negative 1/3 plus I root 14 over 3 and negative 1/3 minus I root 14 over 3. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.